Welcome to Cardboard Conversations. Today we have a bit of a special treat for all of you guys because we have today being visited by Erik Olofsson, the creator of Sorcery Contested Realm. So welcome, Erik.
Thank you for that. I've been enjoying your videos.
Thank you. To be here. Would you like to introduce yourself for the listeners?
So I'm Erik Olofsson, former computer game developer that a little bit more than a year ago ran a Kickstarter campaign quite successfully for the Sorcery Contested Realm, the card game. Mm-hmm. And I've been full-time on this project now for a year and a half, and things are going forward at kind of rocket speed, and we have a good team working on the game as well now, and working through the practical things about getting a physical card games into the hands of players.
I expect that's a lot different from having a, digital product that you can just sort of reiterate and get people to download stuff and everything like that. So I imagine just having to send it off to the press is a bit nerve-wracking and seeing if the product ends up where you want it. So speaking of having the product in hand, a couple of weekends ago, you had this big sorcery day. Everybody was opening boosters and boxes. How was it to finally see some product being opened?
That was great to see. So as the maker of it, then I of course worry about quality issues a lot when I have my head kind of down working on print and sort of double checking everything for a lot of time, and I worry that things go wrong, or half of the booster packs are full of foils, or there's a box with no foils, and any things like that. And there's 100 things that can go wrong, and it's almost a miracle if nothing goes wrong, rather than the other way around, unfortunately. But it worked surprisingly well. So, and everyone seemed to have a great time opening packs. So that's good to see. It was great. And also you guys as well, but especially us that work on the game, we have seen all the cards and we know everything very kind of deeply, or we recognize everything. So it was great to see people that haven't actually seen the cards open up and seeing their reactions. So.
Yeah, exactly. And thank you so much for sending us some packs as well. It was really cool to open, and it really had some of that, old magic. Yeah, sort of not just magic, but also magical feeling to it. Opening something and not knowing every card and getting the surprise of seeing the art and how well it works. Are you happy with the decision to have no borders on the cards themselves?
Yes, of course. That worked out really well. And I think that's one of those things in the card game industry where 20 or 30 years ago, it was a limitation where you couldn't quite, they were technically hard to print the art all the way out, and you had centering was a lot worse when you did cutting, and you had a lot less sort of automatic quality assurance tools that you just don't have today. So I think it's actually kind of overdue that cards get more of this look, and it's a little bit of a sort of conservative hangover that not all card games look sort of similar to Sorcery in a way.
Especially for the art, because it is so, it's such a huge part of Sorcery to have this beautiful art and all the art be handcrafted in one way or another. So I really think it works super well.
Yeah, you really get to enjoy the cards. So speaking of the cards, Erik, do you have a specific card in mind that you can just, walk us through the creation of? How do you create the cards? What things do you consider? And is there some special card that you really like that you would like to talk about with us?
One that would be a little bit interesting would be polar bears is an interesting one for a couple of reasons, because in the beginning the game had quite a big field. It had, let's see, it was like 7 by, maybe it was even 7 by 7 squares, and we kept making it smaller to shorten the games, to sort of create contact between the players. But because if it takes 4 turns or something before you sort of make contact and fight, it's a little bit slow and boring. And making the game field be 5 by 4 square is one way to increase contact early. But we also thought a lot about cards that abilities and cards that could attack the opponent very fast. And so, for example, Void Walk is one of those, where you can just play it in the void and sit around in the void and sort of attack in. And Polar Bears was another, where you can just attack backwards, so you get through contact right away. And that one also worked especially well, where people sort of read the card and then you sort of see a sort of light bulb above their head, where this is cool, because it sort of takes advantage of the square grid as well. And it has a very simple ability, and it has very sort of iconic and memorable art. So I would say that's one of the cards that are sort of the soul of the game, you could say.
Also a little fun word pun with the polar bears.
Yeah. And after that, like it went through many passes of balance and sort of type line, like making sure that one is like poetic and nice. And so there's a lot of polish like after the card is nailed down, but it's still quite a lot of work to squeeze out just the extra little bit to make the card perfect.
So is it always like figuring out the card's mechanic and then getting some art for it? Or have you at some point gotten a piece of art and thought, okay, I need to make a mechanic for this art because it's really flavorful or interesting?
So we go both ways there. The most common way is to start with a kind of high concept where, okay, we will have a couple of angry ogres in the game. And then I get the art commissioned, and then maybe half a year later, we actually finalize the game design. But the artists also have a lot of artistic freedom, which means that we often adjust what the card does depending on what the art looks like. See if I can think of a good example there. I might have to look through some cards to exactly figure them out.
Yeah.
But I guess Occult Ritual would be one where so it has these hooded figures around the fire. So I think she only got Occult Ritual as the title, but she made it with these hooded figures around the fire, and it was meant to only give you extra mana, basically spend the card to get extra mana. But then, because of the art connection, we made it so that like you get 2 mana for each allied spellcaster here. So if you have more spellcasters in the occult circle, then you get more mana from it. So that would be an example of going that way as well. And I'm sure there would be like 100 examples of that.
But that's super cool. Also, the whole creative process doesn't stop when the artist delivers the art. You also sort of take in the art, reflect on it, and add something to the card. I think that's really cool to hear.
Yeah. I actually have these. In game design, it's often the most common way is we have this spreadsheet with cards, and now all the cards are done, and then we commission all the art, and you don't change anything. And if the art doesn't quite fit, then so be it, because you just, I don't know, release the game and then that's it. But, well, personally, I think you get a lot, like it gets a lot more flavorful and nice if you if you have time to sort of iterate and go back and forth, and that's kind of where the real magic happens, I guess, where all the bits of a card align and makes it just kind of perfect. Like it should be a pleasure to sort of read all the bits and see how they fit together.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Also, it really adds some soul to the cards that it wouldn't have had if you just commissioned the art, slapped it on, and everything's done. The whole idea of sort of reiterating the process again, it really does add a lot of flavor.
Yeah. The downside of that is, of course, that it takes more time and love, I guess. It's hard to produce a game where you, so say you have a production schedule of a release every 3 months, and you have to do 250 cards. Those, like, you would have to just do all these cut-offs where, okay, we can't touch this, it just has to go out, which is understandable in one way, but it also, I don't know, personally, I really like working this way, where you just push the quality level to sort of heights that haven't been reached before, hopefully.
That is very clearly visible when you have the cards in hand, that it has had that extra time and love. So you just mentioned that the artist usually has a lot of freedom when creating the cards, and that's worked out truly very well for both alpha and presumably also beta. But what about when we get into Arthurian Legends, where you have to have a more sort of themed approach to it? Does anything change in your relationship and the way you work with the artist?
Well, I see it as partly a natural process where things would get a little bit more kind of exact and determined, because especially in the beginning of the game's life cycle, you can use a lot of kind of broad fantasy tropes or concepts. So, for example, angry ogres or like an ancient dragon and so on. And then you can get make it do exactly what it sort of looks like. But a few years in, say when you have 5 or 10 dragons, then you have a lot of other considerations where, for example, it needs to have an ability that isn't too similar to the other dragons. So yeah. I imagine at that point you would have to have a bit more sort of control over the artistic process, because it needs to, I don't know, shoot fire in this specific way. But that'll be a different challenge for them, I suppose. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the early days when it's
exactly. This is the Wild West where everything goes.
Yeah, more sort of creative chaos.
Yeah, but it's great being, on the product side and being a consumer of sorcery. It really translates into the cards. We opened these few boosters and it was excellent. I had such a blast and I really enjoyed the cards. They were absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I hope you have more coming.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
We're
waiting together with everyone else and so excited, and just daily checking in with the roadmap to see when we are getting some cards and getting to play the game. Very excited for it.
It should be quite close now for Europe, depending on how fast it sort of shifts from the UK, because they have the cards now, and they have all the items. So.
But yeah, the cards, they are absolutely gorgeous. We are waiting for alpha, and we have also already ordered beta.
Yeah.
Because I just said to Sophie when we opened, I need to have a complete set of this. I need to have the entire set, and I just need to have it in a binder and just enjoy it so much, because it is absolutely stunningly gorgeous.
Quite a lot of people have said that they actually want a full set of it. And
we haven't done that before. We have never collected like an entire Magic set. We have like stuff together, but there's just something about the cards being very vibrant, very different, and just having a lot of soul that makes you want to have the complete set. So I'm very excited to see how many complete sets will be collected around the world.
Yeah, so I'm a complete set collector of early Magic the Gathering, so Alpha, Beta, Arabian Nights, and Legends, and so on. And there was something about those sets that also, it made me and many others also collect sets, but it sort of fell by the wayside, and I'm not sure exactly why, but maybe there's a sort of subconscious recreating of whatever made people want to create those sets that I'm sort of getting into sorcery, hopefully.
I think you nailed that perfectly. And I also think it had this, all nostalgic vibe, and many of the cards also had a little, tipped with the hat and a little homage to some of the OG Magic cards. Like, oh, that seems like a Mox, and the polar bears are like, oh, that's like the grizzly bears, or maybe it's like the polar bears from Ice Age. but still, it's really much its own, its own game also. So there is this nostalgic vibe, and we only have Magic as a reference, but I think that sorcery is unique in its own way, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it's going to be expanded upon in the future sets also.
Yeah, well, I'm glad the game mechanics are so different that all the cards do very distinctly different things, even though like the concept can be similar. So, for example, an ancient dragon in the game, then like you try to make that card to whatever makes sense within the rules of sorcery and how it works. And in sorcery, it would work in a kind of distinct way just because of how the rules are, like with airborne flying diagonally, for example, or I don't know, sacred scarabs exploding and so on. Is something that sorcery can do that other games might not be able to do. So you get a very sort of distinct mechanical identity to it, while at the same time, as you say, some throwbacks and sort of thematic purity, I guess, or how games were made back then.
It really does have like also the eclectic feel of the alpha and the beta. But now that we're getting into Arthurian Legends next year, I was wondering why exactly Arthurian Legends? Because personally, I'm a huge fan of the mythology and the myths around King Arthur. Why did you choose exactly that theme?
Well, it did come quite natural because I wanted to have a set that had a established real world mythology to it, but also was quite relatively small in scope. So Arthurian Legends just fits super well there. And there's a bit of a backstory to this, which is that I don't aim to create a sort of corporate IP or a large story with sorcery, but keep it more open, and it's more like the player's story. So there wouldn't be sets that we create a new character and then we make 20 cards around that in order to say write novels about that character and make a sort of blockbuster movie about it 10 years down the road. So I can imagine some corporation, like there might be a dream of wanting to have a sort of super big franchise in that just spans all different media. But personally, I want to keep sorcery sort of focused at what it does, because then it can kind of explore that niche and be itself to the fullest, and not take other kind of brand considerations like that into consideration. And that also means that since a lot of other companies they push their own IP and want to build their own IP like that, it means that things like Arthurian Legends, it's kind of left unexplored, and it's almost original to do a card game set around that, even though it's obviously not original because it's existing mythology. But it's cool, and I think people will enjoy that. Just it feels different.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will enjoy it, and we're really excited. Our kids are actually named after King Arthur. We have an Arthur, we have a Tristan, and we have a Hector, and they're all knights in the mythology. So clearly big fans of the Arthurian legends here. But
well, it did come quite natural because I wanted to have a set that had a established real world mythology to it, but also was quite relatively small in scope. So Arthurian Legends just fits super well there. And there's a bit of a backstory to this, which is that I don't aim to create a sort of corporate IP or a large story with sorcery, but keep it more open, and it's more like the player's story. So there wouldn't be sets that we create a new character and then we make 20 cards around that in order to say write novels about that character and make a sort of blockbuster movie about it 10 years down the road. So I can imagine some corporation, like there might be a dream of wanting to have a sort of super big franchise in that just spans all different media. But personally, I want to keep sorcery sort of focused at what it does, because then it can kind of explore that niche and be itself to the fullest, and not take other kind of brand considerations like that into consideration. And that also means that since a lot of other companies they push their own IP and want to build their own IP like that, it means that things like Arthurian Legends, it's kind of left unexplored, and it's almost original to do a card game set around that, even though it's obviously not original because it's existing mythology. But it's cool, and I think people will enjoy that. Just it feels different.
yeah, I'm pretty sure we will enjoy it, and we're really excited. Our kids are actually named after King Arthur. We have an Arthur, we have a Tristan, and we have a Hector, and they're all knights in the mythology. So clearly big fans of the Arthurian legends here. But did you go into like reading a lot of stuff about the mythology, or are you just exploring on what you already know and what you sort of already feel about the myth?
So we did read a lot, but we also want to use the things that people recognize. So it's a mix of the very famous things and also some obscure things if it fits specific game mechanics really well. But it's also quite a broad set in that we use European mythology a little bit here and there as well, just to not have it be super narrow. And an advantage here is, of course, also that the source material, it's a lot of different writers, and they often contradict each other. So you can kind of get away a little bit with what you want to get out of it, you could say.
There's a lot of creative freedom in just picking and choosing what you want. So we're, of course, also hoping for some interesting relics. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff there to pick on and a lot of sites also. So I think that fits really well with sorcery. It's going to be very interesting to see that set.
Yeah, it's quite heavy when it comes to those things. So that's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking very much forward to it. And also we know that the alpha set and the beta set does not have an official law yet. But we know that if you see the backside of the Atlas cards, you can actually see something resembling a realm, and there are also some locations on the Atlas cards. So are you going to expand more into heavy lore on future sets?
So we would explore that. So I think there's a lot to be gained from having evocative names, like place names, and also names of monsters and characters.
Yeah.
But it would never be like, we would slowly fill it out rather than kind of try to fill it out all at once. So it's again keeping that more kind of Dungeons and Dragons feel, where it's for the players to explore.
I think you really hit it on the head there, because I think that's also something that really attracts me to the game. We are old D&D players as well. So the whole vibe of sort of creating your own narrative as you are playing the game, it also fits into a sort of computer game-like experience where you explore something and you have your own story in your head as you're playing it. So there's the whole comparison about making a computer game and then making a TCG. What has surprised you the most about having a physical product that you need to get into the hands of people?
Maybe the lead times you need to actually deliver something.
Yeah.
There's it's kind of a running joke in the games industry that you take a game and you try to figure out how long time it takes to make it, and then you double it, and then you double it again, and then maybe you have a good estimate. And of course I thought it would be easy with Sorcery, like it's just a sort of small card game compared to like big computer games. Like that must be fast and easy, but it has its own set of challenges. So it's hard and takes time.
And I imagine you also have a lot of like different moving parts that you have to get in order and get all your ducks in a row to sort of make sure that everything just flows.
Yes. Well, it already will be a lot faster for beta, obviously. Well, almost all the cards are the same, but when it comes to like quality assurance and like just checking everything, like everything gets faster and easier the second time. But I guess that's also why I'm doing this project, because it's something new and interesting as well compared to computer games.
Yeah, but in a computer game, if something becomes absolutely broken, you can just release a patch. You can downpower something. But in a card game, people are having the cards in their hand. What are you going to do about power creeps and broken combos and stuff like that?
Well, I hope that Sorcery is quite resilient to that because of the unique and elite restrictions. So it's a lot fewer cards. And also, Sorcery will never, like, the intention was never to do a kind of Pro Tour style gameplay with a lot of cash prizes. So hopefully there is a little bit more sort of room for keeping it fun social play, and people can choose what to include or not. But eventually, when the card pool becomes really big, then I imagine you would have some sort of rotation or different formats and so on. If you would always have the kind of oldest format with the biggest card pool will always be the kind of quickest and most brutal in a sense.
Yeah.
But then some people might like that as well, even though it can be kind of unfair and so on. So.
Yeah, you're an old school Magic player yourself, aren't you? I think I heard you talk about it in some interviews, because those really old formats, they allow you for a lot of fun and a lot of combos.
Yes, exactly. So those games, just some of the games you will just win or lose depending on what happens. Like you land Mox, Black Lotus, Sol Ring, Mind Twist for 5 on the first turn or something. You have combos like that are just flat out unfair, but everyone can get it once in a while, so it's just part of it. It's just it would not lend itself that well for a hardcore tournament, I suppose.
No, that would make some boring tournament games, but yeah, you're right. When you're just playing with friends back home, it's really easy to just say, well, maybe not use that deck, or maybe don't use that card or something. So you just, you know, make up your own rules as you play, so everybody will have fun.
Yeah, you can balance it out, or you hand the best deck to the worst player, and then
Yeah.
evens out.
So you mentioned that there might be some different formats in the future. So of course we're going to have the vintage format where you're allowed to play all kinds of cards. But is there going to be some kind of standard format also?
Or we will decide about that when we get there. So we would have to make quite a lot of cards before that becomes a real consideration. But I definitely see that as a possibility.
So is there anything about multiplayer formats? Because I think I saw something along the lines that the development team is considering something about how that might work in the future if you decide to do it. Is this something that you would like to see players explore, or do you want to take the lead on having like a 4-player format?
Well, I would very much want to encourage the community to just try different things. We will try it out ourselves as well, but I think it's best to try to provide the building blocks and the puzzle pieces, and let people play it the way they want to play it, without too much sort of exact command, I guess, about how it should be played. So I can definitely imagine formats that only allow certain avatars, for example, and multiplayer with like different size playing field and everything like that. So
that's also going to be the fun part, to explore that when the product arrives. We can really, try stuff out like that.
Yeah, I'm keen to see what people find about it. This will, of course, be easier when the card pool is bigger. This will be much easier to experiment with. So it might take a while before there's enough kind of building blocks there to create a huge number of different formats, at least. But
yeah,
at least multiplayer should be possible, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking something like using the pre-constructed decks. We talked about having some friends over and just, throwing ourselves into a 4-player game and see how it goes, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, so we did some internal testing with that.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things was that you probably have to like reduce the life or do things to sort of speed the game up a little bit, rather than, well, there was some tests with like 40 life for the player, but then that becomes it just takes forever. So it's more like it has to be faster and easier, or like you make the players start very close to each other so that there's a lot of fighting going on early on. So
I could see it being very chaotic, but also very fun and very flavorful to just everybody grab an element and just go at it.
Yeah, and formats like that, the other things that we thought about was that you can have a playing field like that, and you have certain sites, but certain neutral sites that just start in play, or they start in a random location, so that each game becomes different, and so on. So there's a bunch of different things that can be done. And I also imagine we almost certainly would have some sets in the future that specifically have a bunch of multiplayer designed cards as well.
That sounds interesting. Speaking of future sets, have you thought about how to keep older cards relevant when future set comes out? Is there some kind of mechanic that's going to, expand upon what older cards might do or interact with older cards, so that older cards not just easily forgotten or stay relevant?
I would hope some of this would happen naturally, where certain cards just become more relevant depending on the metagame. There's some cases, of course, when you can make cards that, like, you look at some old existing cards and then you see if, okay, what would this work with if it was if there was like another kind of obvious tool to work with it, to sort of unleash the power of it. Once you are a few sets in, you can also do things like look at older cards that maybe they had a cool concept, but the implementation didn't really work. And so say when we get to revised edition, maybe we could introduce some new cards that replace old cards that clearly didn't work. You see what I mean? Yeah, I don't think I have any. Well, we will soon see which cards that are just sort of got some misses when it came to the design, and then we can try to solve that that way. But it's kind of a long process that takes years to kind of replace and hone the base set of the game. And again, hopefully you can make a bunch of cards sort of come alive by creating new interactions with them as well.
There's also been a lot of playing on TTS. There's been League 1 and the second season is going on right now. Are you in there watching people play? And has there been some gameplay where you go, whoa, I hadn't seen that coming? Has there been any surprises for you?
I'm following it quite well, at least the games that get out on YouTube I've seen.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating to see, and something I was extremely happy to see is that how the decks kind of react to each other, and that you get the metagaming and solutions to specific cards. So, for example, well, you have these kind of big 5-power minions that dominate the playing field, and then people start to use Root Spider to disable them. And then people start to put Geyser in their deck to kill the Root Spider. Like there's this kind of answer and solution thing, which is well, it's kind of the beauty with card games, really, where sure some cards are powerful, but it always depends on the context and what you're trying to fight against. And it's kind of beautiful to see that dynamic happens in Sorcery as well. And that will, of course, I expect really cool things to happen once it gets into the hands of thousands of people instead of, well, I don't know, a handful of people at TTS.
Yeah. It's going to be a much bigger sample size, and people are going to find really, creative and interesting solutions. There might even be a, wide weenie thing coming to Sorcery at one point. That could be fun.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see how it evolves.
Yeah.
Right now, we had our first foil card. We were very lucky in our 3 packs. We got the Apprentice Wizard as a foil card, and very shocked to see how well it works. How happy were you to see that all of that masking work that you had done manually actually works incredibly well with the cards? Because I think that was unanimous. Everybody who opened the foil card said it was beautiful, and the interplay between the rainbow foil and the silver coal foil was just stunning. Was it great to see that it really worked out and that it made a lot of sense?
Yeah, so similar to sort of quality issues and like booster pack randomization and so on, it was a big relief in the sense that we did a lot of these kind of blind, or like you create the files and you create the masks, but you don't quite know exactly how it will work. And when we did the tests, it was only a limited set of cards that we sent back and forth, because it takes a lot of time to actually print it with the correct techniques. And with the printer being in China and us being in New Zealand, it's not so efficient. Even if you kind of air freight things back and forth, it takes time, and you can only get so far with videos as well, just because foil, a camera doesn't quite capture the foil correctly, just because of how it works with like light values. They don't, like, the dynamic range of a camera doesn't quite capture the entire thing that the human eye catches. So it's a lot of kind of guesswork and working on, theoretically this should work well and be nice. But it's nice to see it actually working in reality as well.
We have also heard that there are people out there that have been a bit dissatisfied with the foil cards being full art on the backside, because that makes it, impossible to play without sleeves. And we don't know why people would play without sleeves, but let's just go with that. So is that something you're going to take into consideration, maybe changing the foiling, or is the foiling just as you want it and people will just have to play with sleeves?
So this comes from me and my friends. Like we were playing with sleeves the last 20 years anyways. So it isn't really much of a... I think pretty much anyone does it. And well, if it would be very few people that complain, and maybe that's sort of complaining just to complain. So
yeah, exactly.
I think that that one too comes a little bit from the history of card games, and there's a certain sort of conservatism in it where but you can't do that because you couldn't do it 20 years ago. But it's also like, it's almost like you're looking at the world 20 years ago, but instead of looking at it right now, and everyone plays with sleeves. So
yeah, and the advantage of having the opportunity of having the full art on the back, truly full art, I think far outweigh the consideration of playing with, transparent sleeves. Then you'll just have to get some colored sleeves because it really is stunning. I think the main question is, do you display the full art or the foil side in our set collection? I think that's a truly difficult question.
We'll have to release binders that are that shows both sides, of course.
Yeah,
but the textless full art side is also, it's nice to have both of those sides, because then you can play with the textless full art, but then you can also take the card out of the sleeve and actually show it to your opponent. So you're not just making up what the card does. You can actually prove that it does what you say it does.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, also because, foiling is actually rare in Sorcery. So having foil cards, they should just go to the binder, right? They should just be displayed for all its magnificent glory.
Or maybe just if you're sort of that, need to bling out your deck, you could also potentially at some point have a full foil deck. Difficult, but you could potentially have it at some point.
Yeah, well, I certainly have that as a goal.
That's great to hear. I love that you're excited about the foil cards as well, because they really do work exceptionally well. And I also think I kept saying like in the video where we opened, you just can't really clearly see how beautiful the foiling is, because it's the interplay between both having the rainbow but also the cold foil that is impossible for the camera to really pick up.
Yeah, and there's something with the frames and the title that it's kind of readable from it's kind of readable from all angles.
Yeah,
but the foil is kind of only shiny in certain angles and so on. So it's nice to have them react differently from each other. So it's almost like it becomes more when it's together, because it's a little bit hard to explain, but it works.
But yeah,
nice.
I totally get it. It really complements each other really beautifully.
Yeah.
I'm looking really much forward. Also, we talked with Mike from Collector Art House, and he also said that there might be some of those full art cards that has a little maybe Easter egg kind of thing, that where the text box is on the normal card, in the full art version, there might be something hidden beneath the text box. So I'm looking really much forward to seeing more foil cards and just...
Yeah, and that's the general sense of the game entirely, that there's a lot of Easter eggs, there's a lot to explore and a lot of art to sort of discover. And I mean, the pace, I think it took us half an hour to open just 3 booster packs. I have no idea how we're going to do an entire box, because I mean, there's just so much to look at. So there's no doubt that the Kickstarter was incredibly successful, and a lot of people are excited, and everybody's already asking, where can I order the beta version? And it seems like a lot of people are very committed to Sorcery at this point. Does all this success make you consider having more than one set per year, even given that there is some limitations due to the handcrafted art?
Well, we're basically creating cards as fast as we can already, but we have some we will have some tricks up our sleeve when it comes to sort of creating more interest and more kind of content, potential content, like, throughout the year. Like, not full sets, but something at least that would affect the game and can sort of make people talk about it again. But yeah, more will be revealed about that, of course.
Oh yeah, that sounds interesting. So could that be stuff like Ed Beard Jr.'s mini set with the dragons? Could that be something like,
Yeah, that would be one of those tricks, because a mini set like that is of course much faster to do. Like, the playtesting of, we'll say, 8 to 20 cards, depending on how many cards would be in the set. It's production wise, you can just make it happen much faster, and it can be made so that it affects the metagame quite a lot with just a few cards as well. So yeah, we'll see. We will also experiment with it. So it's not like we have the best perfect formula now for the next 10 years or anything. We will have to sort of see how it goes and sort of react to feedback and so on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Even though it's really disappointing you don't have a 10-year plan or something. But yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And it also makes sense that you're not already planning everything. You're sort of responding to the need and how players sort of consume it and how it develops. Because maybe it turns out that, once a year we get a nice big set and we just play it and everybody's super happy. And maybe it turns out that having a little, mini set every now and then is super nice.
Yeah, well, I would hope so. And this also comes back to one of the earlier points, where if you schedule a lot of sets in a sort of exact way, and you force yourself to create a certain amount of content at a super high pace, then it's just harder to do something that really resonate with players, because it's kind of a different product at that point.
So talking about products, right now we have the pre-con decks and we have the booster box. Do you have anything you just really want to do from a creative point? Is there something else you would like to explore in terms of products?
Well, there's a lot of different things to explore, really. I can't talk too much about them, but I'm a huge fan of having like doing sort of new things and sort of asymmetric things that are a bit surprising. And this project has also always been about like doing things in a sort of quirky way, new way, rather than sort of looking at the latest in the TCG industry and doing whatever numbered cards or whatever it would be. So I would definitely want to just explore cool, weird things that haven't been done before instead.
I think that works super well, and I think that also clearly shows that you like to drop in a little hint of mystery here and there, not revealing all the cards, having curio cards. I mean, that's also really fun because it gives us something to truly explore because we don't know anything about it. So without asking too much about the curio cards, have anybody opened a curio card yet? Have you seen anyone open one? You don't have to say who.
I haven't seen that. No.
No.
It's also quite unlikely. Like, it's possible that one has been opened, but it's in the grand scheme of things, the number of booster boxes that have been opened now, like it's almost nothing compared to the kind of bulk of things. So yeah, I can't really say more, but yeah, it's possible, but
we won't ask any more about
Possible,
it.
but very unlikely. Yeah. So when we talked with Mike, there was a live chat going on, and people seem to be really excited about Norse mythology and ancient Greek mythology, Roman mythology. Could that be some mythologies that sorcery is going to dive into in the future?
that's very possible. Well, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
There isn't a super immediate plan, but I'm sure we'll get there. The alpha set also has a little bit of those kind of baked in as well. So there's kind of seeds put in there or that can be explored further.
Yeah, exactly. Those Amazonian warriors, they are just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, there's a lot of little hints that would be very nice to take and sort of carry forward. Are you a fan of mythology yourself? And if you had to pick a mythology that you feel mostly connected to, what would that be?
Probably Greek mythology, I would say, or Arthurian. I probably should say like Norse mythology.
Yeah, all the Scandinavian people are shouting out there.
And I like that one too, but maybe there's something about the Greek mythology and Arthurian mythology. Like there's a little bit more artistically to go on there. Like unfortunately, the Vikings they didn't. Like they left some art and sort of carvings and so on, but it wasn't quite the same as the.
No.
Oh, we have you have a very nice, rich catalog of stuff to look at with the Roman and Greeks. There's a lot of things
exactly.
that you can be inspired by.
They feel bigger, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
definitely.
Right now, when you're getting up and you're going to work, what are you most excited about working on at the moment?
Well, that would be Arthurian Legends. I try to get to. I'm a little bit stuck in a loop right now where there's kind of responsibilities with print and with distribution. And there tends to be all these practical things that come in the way of actual game design.
Yeah.
But it's finally getting to a point where it's more and more time per day is kind of game design, which that feels awesome because that was kind of why this project was started as well, because I just enjoy sitting and sort of thinking about cards and designing cards and sort of puzzling together the different elements in cool ways and finding artists that would fit perfect for certain concepts and so on.
Yeah, speaking of artists, we know that you have a really nice blend of older nostalgic artists from Magic Gathering, and you have found some really awesome, talented new artists. So, what are you looking for when commissioning artists and art for Sorcery?
Well, I look for a distinct style, like a style that not necessarily realistic, but it could be like even the way that humans are made could be a bit sort of distinct in a way that like you can always tell that okay, it's this artist because of like the choice of media and the sort of slightly stylized things that makes it interesting. So any artist that sort of is a distinct style in itself, I would be very happy to take on. There's also certain technical things where, for whatever reason, on a card, it doesn't work so well to use a lot of black and white on it because for some reason, it sort of feels a little bit unfinished then, which means a bunch of different artists that work with a lot of ink and so on, it doesn't quite work as well. So there's a bunch of considerations like that. I also have, of course, the physical art restriction as well, where it has to be like watercolor or oil paintings and so on. Actual physical styles. That also helps where artists, when it's digital, then all artists might use the same kind of brushes in Photoshop. But if it's hand painted or like traditional art, there tends to be much more clear sort of individual differences in how the brush strokes are made somehow. So that's another reason why it's nice to use all traditional art.
Yeah, we'll just have a couple of questions left and then we'll wrap up. But in terms of artists, have you already scouted people that you're trying to get into the game and trying to make them make some art for the game?
Yes, well, there's already a few new ones that have been working for a while that hasn't been revealed. And I always have a bunch of artists on my sort of wish list as well.
Yeah.
Maybe the sort of recent success can help as well to bring on certain legendary artists that I very much want to work with. And I'm also looking for new artists that just would fit well. Like young talent is always needed. So it's just a mix, you could say.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking really much forward to seeing what you have up in your sleeve. I'm just hoping for Rebecca Quay, not trying to push any agenda here, but just putting it out there.
A little wish list thought there. Yeah. So I think I've seen in a couple of interviews that you said that you truly are an entrepreneur. You see like a gap in the market and you get a lot of ideas about what you would do with it and how you could fill that space. And sorcery is one of the answers that you saw a gap in the market for a game like this. So could you describe what the gap was and how you think sorcery is filling it?
Well, so this comes from my old school collecting and playing, where myself and friends that play games but don't necessarily play games like every... Like I used to play Magic the Gathering competitively, for example. But it's very different if you play it every day and you have many hours to play it compared to old school Magic the Gathering, where you might collect for month and then you have a game night like every 2 months or something, where you get to kind of show off the latest thing. So it's understanding that type of customer, you could say. And of course it's I also collect art. Like I had some of the older Magic the Gathering artists that I got art pieces from and even commissioned some art from even before this game. But I was also thinking about making a card game that sort of fits that old school style. So then it just sort of naturally merged there, those two interests as well. And part of the gap in the market is, of course, that you have all these 40-year-olds that play card games, and they might be a little bit more established with careers and so on, and their higher purchasing power, basically. Like instead of buying loose booster packs, it's buying booster boxes. It's kind of almost the same thing, you could say.
Yeah.
So that's always a positive if you're trying to make a game that well, you need to make money too in order to sort of be able to justify all the resources and time that goes into it.
So one final question. We're, of course, sorcery content creators already because we really enjoyed the game and we backed it already. So we've been waiting to sort of make some content and we're really excited to make content on it now. What would you like for content creators to do? What kind of collaboration do you foresee in the future? How can you best use us and how can we sort of help you bring out the message of sorcery?
Good question.
That's a broad question. I guess show that the game is fun and for everyone. I suppose. There's been a steady kind of quality creep, I suppose, in content creation from the early days, that's of course it's an extremely positive thing to see people be excited about it and make better and better videos and more. And I'm especially looking forward to like seeing actual physical play, of course. That would be a big deal. We haven't seen much yet. Like there's a bunch of tabletop simulator games up there, but it's never quite the same. So there's that, and I don't know. I'm personally looking forward to seeing people just going through collections and talking about cards, that kind of thing.
Definitely. That would be really fun. So, Erik, it has been a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for all the time you've given us. We really appreciate it. And we're so happy we could do the interview and just ask you some of the questions we've been dying to know about sorcery. Is there anything that you would like to wrap off on with saying? Anything, any news, anything you just want to say to the viewers out there who probably all are very excited about sorcery and getting to play within the next couple of weeks, hopefully?
Well, I guess I can just say that I hope that the cards arrive very soon.
Yeah.
I will unfortunately have to wait even longer than everyone else because of us being here in New Zealand, which is a small island out of nowhere. So I will watch all the content and I will be very jealous. But yeah, it was good talking to you guys, and it's awesome to see your enthusiasm. It's sort of, what to say, contagious.
Yeah, and likewise. Thanks a lot for having us, Erik. It has been an absolute pleasure, and we're looking really much forward to seeing even more sorcery cards in the future.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.